Hi guys, I'm Jeremy and I'm out here at Dillon Reservoir in Colorado. I'm going to tell you a story today of a huge tragedy that happened on October 2nd, 1970. The football team from Wichita State University crashed in a mountain just east of where I'm at right now, near Loveland Pass, just next to the Eisenhower Tunnel. It's a huge tragedy, not just because of the loss of life, but it was completely preventable. It wasn't because of mechanical error or because of the weather. It was because the pilot wanted to show them the scenic route, and he didn't study the maps that well before he left, and the plane was 5,000 pounds overweight. So no doubt, a huge tragedy. So in this video, I'll go out to the actual site. There's still wreckage there, even though this happened 54 years ago. There's still tons of debris out there, and I'll give you a background of what happened in this case. So I'm just getting to the trailhead here. This is where it gets pretty steep. So super tragic story. 31 out of 40 people ended up losing their lives. Originally 11 survived, but 2 of them died in the next few days or weeks. So I'll give you kind of a rundown of the lead up to this and this football team, the Shockers. So in the 60s, Wichita State University was trying to build up and become more prestigious. They already had a pretty good basketball team at that time. And so they figured, what's the other big American sport? Football. And so they started to gather funds and develop a plan for the stadium and how they would roll out the team. So by 1968, they have their first season. And obviously it's a new team, so they didn't do that well. They actually lost all their games, but that's expected for a new team. The next season, they came back a little bit better. They lost almost all their games except for the first one and the last one, which isn't too bad. At least people usually remember the first or last game, so that's good in a way. And then they got into their third season in 1970, and they lost their first game at home and 2 that were away. But they were still optimistic, and they were looking forward to this game against the University of Utah. So the athletic director that year ended up making a contract with the airline company to fly them to the games that were away. So they put out many bids, and this company, Golden Eagle, won the contract, which is always a big deal for any company if you get a big contract with a school, because you're kind of guaranteed to get a bunch of money that year and do quite a lot of flights. And so he wanted to show his appreciation by giving a little extra. And so he said he wouldn't just bring them to play the games. During the flights, he would take them on a sightseeing tour a bit. So they would fly to an area and he would kind of go out of his way maybe a little bit, or just make sure he would point out certain things along the way. So October 2nd, 1970, they leave in the morning and they're going to head off to Utah. But they have to make a stop in Denver at the Stapleton Airport to refuel. These are old school prop planes, so I don't think they could go quite as far. And so there's 2 different planes they have. They have a gold plane and a black plane. The gold plane is for all the starters, so that's the better players. And they also had a few dignitaries on this trip and people who were helping out with like ticket sales and different things. And then the black plane, the other plane, is like the B team. Those are all the extra players, but they're not starting. And so they decided that the black plane would go up through Wyoming to get to Utah, and the golden plane would take the scenic route. And so they leave Stapleton Airport in Denver and they head up through the Rockies, and they're basically following the I-70 west, which isn't really a bad idea. It's an easy marker, but they obviously didn't know the area that well. Apparently they just bought maps while they were in Denver, which is ridiculous to me. Like, if you're going to plan to do something like that, you would have had to study that like 2 weeks in advance, or at least if the guy had experience. And ironically, of the 2 pilots on the plane, one was the president of the company, Ron Skipper, and then the other pilot was Dan Crocker. And so Ron Skipper wasn't actually certified to fly that type of plane, but Dan Crocker could. And so technically, Dan Crocker is the captain. But we all know the other guy's the president who's paying his paycheck and the president of that company, so he's obviously going to have to listen to what that guy says, right? They started to head that way, and then at some point they're figuring out it's a box canyon. In other words, it basically it's a dead end. It's a canyon for a while, and there's gonna basically be a wall there. And so around this time, the football players and people on the plane are like looking around, and they're like, all of the peaks are like above the plane. They see some of these trails, these old mines, all of this stuff, and they even are going up to the cockpit and like, what's going on? Like we're way low. And so even they knew what was going on, and they had seen the pilot and the co-pilot are kind of like studying over the maps and a little bit panicked, and they could hear them saying, we should have turned back 2 miles ago. So I couldn't even imagine if I'm walking up to the front of like a plane and I see the pilot and co-pilot saying that, I'd be like, oh boy, dude, everyone buckle up. This is going to be interesting. And so they're trying to figure out like what they could do with a short period of time, because I think this type of plane that had 5,000 pounds of extra weight could only raise about 200 feet every mile, and they had to get about 1,000 feet up, basically. So that would take 5 miles, and they had like 2 miles left. So of course, towards the end, the one pilot like turned, I think, to the left real quick, and then they turned back to the right, and there's just no way they could get this long turn in that area in a short time. And they crashed into the forest. And the crazy thing is that the main fuselage, like most of the airplane, wasn't even that damaged initially. And so most of the people apparently had survived. So anyway, luckily they weren't super far from like where that Eisenhower tunnel is. And there's this road here that I imagine was even here back then, because they do some work in this area and for the tunnel and various things. So they were able to come up and rescue a few guys. And so anyway, I'll continue up. This whole trail in general is not long. It's only like 0.8 to the top. And so it's like 1.7 miles or something. Here's where it gets kind of steep, and you could even see they have like a football jersey, because their colors were gold and black, and so it's kind of a marker for people to know where to go. Yeah, so sad. All those young guys and all those people just going off to play a football game, and actually they ended up continuing playing in that league. Like actually 3 weeks after the crash, the remaining football players, like not the starters, but the B team basically, ended up playing a game, and they continued for a while until about 1986. And then because of like financial issues and stuff, they finally ended up like shutting down the football league. So yeah, they got rid of the stadium and stuff, I think, and they're thinking about bringing back football, but I'm not sure the status now. Yeah, I'm almost there now. It's tough, it's pretty steep up. It's not real far, but it's steep. One of the other reasons why I wanted to do this story is because it is so little known. Because what happened was 43 days later, Marshall University plane crash that happened, and 75 people got killed on that, like everyone on the plane in West Virginia. So they ended up making a movie about that, and that's super well known. So that kind of eclipsed this accident here, which was just as horrific, not quite as many people, but still horrible. So anyway, I'll continue a little bit more. I'm almost there. Super insane. Wow. Man, super intense. Jeez. must be just insane coming down towards those trees slowly, and just the first trees hitting the wings or whatever. And the worst part, I think, for most people, as far as like a plane crash, is the fear before, like that terrorizing feeling, because you know you're probably not going to make it. And then you crash, and it's like a huge surprise. Like, I think the only reason why it wasn't like everyone didn't die immediately is because when he was turning, he probably stalled out, and he was probably dropped down from, like, let's say 230 miles per hour down to like 100, and maybe some of the trees slowed it down a bit, and the main fuselage was like still intact. And so the majority of people had apparently been alive, but then, like, you could smell a fire, and I'm sure many people, you know, their legs were broken, maybe they lost arms, whatever, and you're freaking out. You know, you've only got so much time. And then ironically, the rescue teams aren't even that far away, because the Eisenhower tunnel's right next door. They had seen it. And so you're so close to possibly getting out or getting rescued. And then the fuel tank bursts open and hits the flame, which was just filled in Denver, like probably 30 minutes before. Like, I couldn't imagine the screams of the people out here as they were probably getting burned alive at crazy temperature. Just absolutely horrific way to go. And so, of course, there were hearings and investigations about this afterwards. And guess who survived? The owner of the company, who was the, like, pilot or co-pilot, Ron Skipper. Who died? The other pilot, Dan Crocker. And so he could tell the story he wants because the other guy's not there. He wasn't rated to fly that plane. The other guy was. And so he's like, well, the other guy was in control of the plane. So, but we all know he's the owner of the company, and he's paying his paycheck, like he was in control. And even the people who could observe what was going on up front could tell that, you know, who was in charge, basically. And so, yeah, it was the majority of the football team, except for a few guys, had died. And then there were several couples that were on the plane that had several children. And so there were 13 orphans as well out of this accident. And yeah, what a tragedy. I mean, just like, how could that guy not know that you go into a wall, basically, and you'd still need to climb up like 1,000 feet or whatever it is. I think the mountains over there are almost 13,000 feet. So I'm looking at my phone right now, and I'm at 11,000 feet. So they had like still 1,000 feet. I don't know if he came around that side and they couldn't make the entire loop or what. It seemed like the guys mentioned it just jerked to the right and back to the left, or vice versa. So I don't know what happened, but it stalled anyway. And what a bad decision to go sightseeing in an area you don't know that well. There's 58 peaks that are over 14,000 feet in Colorado. So right there, I would be like, we could do some sightseeing, but we're going up to 15,000 feet and not below that. I imagine when he got over near Georgetown and maybe went over that first mountain area, he might have assumed that was the Continental Divide and that he was on the other side going through a valley and it was going to get lower. If he had some experience or had studied the maps like weeks before, he would have known that. But obviously he didn't. And he was able to excuse the blame because he technically wasn't the main pilot. And so 31 people, and then their kids' lives and ruined and everything else. And he should have did some jail time. I mean, you had a trucker that went down this mountain a few years ago, and his brakes went out because he wasn't following the regulations, or his company wasn't anyway. And he didn't go off the pull-off ramp, and he was hoping to ride it out when he got to the bottom near Denver. And there was a big accident down at the bottom, and so all the cars were stopped. He didn't go out of the way. He crashed into all those cars and killed like 5 or 6 people or something, or maybe more. He got life in prison for that, for not doing the right thing. This guy going off on a plane that's 5,000 pounds overweight, that's 2.5 tons, and then just kind of winging it in the mountains with 39 other people, definitely should have gotten charged with manslaughter or something like that. So anyway, I'll head back down. Pretty interesting spot to check out, as sad as it is. It's amazing, 54 years and everything's here like it didn't even happen that long ago, but it's kind of good people could remember this and once again be a lesson for other pilots in general out here, because I'll do a few other plane crashes, but there's a lot in Colorado, and a lot of people don't understand that. I'm not even a pilot, and when you go to high elevations, there's less oxygen, so the plane's gonna run a little bit differently. I was just in the Himalayas on a 125 motorcycle, and it doesn't run well at 15,000 feet because there's less oxygen. And a lot of people out near Telluride, which is one of the highest airports in America, have accidents all the time. The guys are super experienced, but they're used to flying around Florida or Texas. You come out here, it's a different world. So if you are a pilot and you're coming to Colorado, you gotta be careful out here. This is a totally different thing. They should almost have like another training course to be able to even fly out in these areas because it's just so completely different. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe. If you want to be a Patreon member, go for it. And I'll see you next time. Take care.